Hello, everybody. My name is Stacy Magadans. I'm one of the reference librarians at California State University, San Bernardino. Today, I'm going to walk you through a very simple introduction to APA style citations. This won't cover every possible permutation, but it should hit the highlights enough to get you started. For more information and more resources, check out our library guide to APA. We call it our APA Survival Kit. You can find it at libguides.csusb.edu/APA Survival Kit, all one word. All right, APA is an author date style. What does that mean? For your in-text citations, also called parenthetical citations, why? Because they are, as you see here, inside parentheses. The format is to include the author's name and the year, the date. The purpose of this in-text citation is to be as small and unobtrusive as possible, while still pointing your reader to the full information about this item you are citing that appears at the end of your paper in your list of references. So just a couple of very simple examples here. My author's last name is Ramirez, so it's just Ramirez, 1998. Doesn't have to be a personal name. Organizations can also be authors. So Pew Research Center is also a perfectly legitimate author name. You might be saying to yourself, but what about my page numbers of that thing that I was citing? Okay, APA style encourages you to paraphrase. That is to say, to put into your own words whatever idea, fact, thing you are citing from your source. It encourages paraphrasing and discourages direct quoting. Paraphrasing does not need a page number in the in-text citation. The rare exception to that is if you were paraphrasing a passage from a book and it's, something really long, it would be really hard for your reader to find it if they wanted to go look for it. In that case, you could put a page number just as a courtesy. But having said that, it is okay to quote directly if there's a reason to. So for example, if your quoted material is a definition, the way the definition is phrased is really important, so you might want to quote it. Maybe it was a really memorable turn of phrase, or it was a very succinct, just a very great way of saying something. You're allowed to quote in that case. And in such an instance, you must have a page number if your source has pagination. Things that are online, like websites, often don't have page numbers. So in that case, you would put the author, the year, and then an indication of the page number. So that's P period, which is the abbreviation for page, space, and then the number of the page. So you can see that here with page 26. If for some reason your quoted phrase went over a page break, then you have to do it like this. The abbreviation pages is PP period, then a space. And you would put your page range where your quoted material appeared, page 25 to page 26. All right, so how do we handle this with the authors? We've already seen basically how a single author works, but let me mention that there are two ways you can work a citation into your text. One is the narrative type of citation where you are basically making the citation part of your sentence, part of your narration. So I said, research by Garcia, and then I put the year inside parentheses, found that blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm referring to that in kind of a conversational way, but I've still made it very clear to my reader where they would look for the full information about this source I'm citing. The other way to do it is just the straight up parenthetical type where you don't try to work it into your sentence, you just keep it inside the parentheses and put it at the end of whatever fact you are citing. So parentheses, author's name, comma, year. Oh, do notice that the period for the end of the sentence is coming outside that closing parentheses character. If you have two authors, that is to say, if the thing you are citing was written by two people, right, two co-authors, then you would do it this way. So my narrative style here, research by Garcia and Bartle, and then my page number, and then my year, you would spell out the word "and" between your two authors because it's a regular word in a sentence. But if I'm doing it in the parenthetical style, I change that "and" to an ampersand. The logic there is to keep this parenthetical citation as short as possible. Once you hit 3 or more authors in your in-text citation, you just stop and you list only the first author plus the abbreviation et al. So et al is the abbreviation of a Latin term, et alia. It has a couple of forms. It just means and others. So this turns into the abbreviation ET space AL period. Okay, and remember that the period is part of the abbreviation. Okay, it's important. So instead of listing them all out, I say research by Garcia et al. Then I have my year in parentheses. You notice that the period has to be there. Okay, it's not the end of a sentence. It's part of the abbreviation. Then I say research found blah. Garcia et al. Period, comma, 2017, close parentheses, period. Okay, I know it looks funny, but that period after the AL is part of the abbreviation. So what if you're citing multiple sources that state basically the same thing? This is very common in social sciences research. It's encouraged, in fact. So here I'm saying several studies have found such and such a thing. Well, you follow the normal rules for doing authors' names and years. You put them inside just one set of parentheses, but you separate them with semicolons just to make it clear where one stops and another one starts. And it's also important how you order them. So they are going to be in the same order that they would appear in your reference list at the end of your paper, which is to say alphabetical order. So here I have Liu, Mancha, and Romero, okay, LMR, good alphabetical order. Notice that the years don't count for anything in this. Also, I have my co-author with Romero, whose name is Jones. Jones doesn't count for the alphabetization here at all. It's only Romero's name that counts. All right, so having looked at our in-text citations, let's move on to how the full citations look in your reference list. We'll go through some basic elements for a few commonly cited items, but you can think of these as following a pattern. They will always want, assuming you can find it, the author, okay, who wrote this thing or created it or made it, okay? They'll want the date, when it was published, or when it was last updated, for example, if it's a website. The title, what is it called? And then the source, where it came from. That's the most complicated one because things can come from a lot of different types and outlets of material. So, but that's the pattern. Some format considerations. The name of this section is just references. It's not works cited, it's not bibliography. According to APA style, it's just references. They are always in alphabetical order by the author's last name, which is what you had been using in your in-text citations. The whole thing should be double-spaced, but each individual reference entry gets a hanging indent. Okay, what's that? This is how a hanging indent looks. The first line is even with the left margin. but any additional lines that wrap around are indented 1/2 inch. Why, you may be asking? So that the author's last name that your reader is hunting for is standing out on a empty background, so it's easier to find. All right, let's start with the authors. Here are the 4 common types of things I'm going to show you how to do: books, articles, an essay within an edited book, and a web page. In your list of references, author names are always inverted. Last name, comma, and then initials, okay? You can do just the first initial, you can do multiple initials if you know them, but never their first name. Why? The APA adopted this to try to combat sexism in the evaluation of papers. When there is no obviously gendered first name, it's a little harder to tell who your author is. So just initials. You'll notice here I have 3 written out, and I said in my in-text citations, you would never do 3, you just stop at 2, 3 or more gets at all. That's not true in this full information here in my reference list. For this full information, you list up to 20 co-author names for an APA-style reference citation. Yes, 20. Seems like an arbitrary number, but whatever. You put an ampersand before the last one. Here I have just 3, but I have an ampersand before the last one. If there are more than 20 authors on the thing you are citing, you would put an ellipsis, that 3-dot symbol, which means this is standing in for something that's missing, or there's more information hidden under here. So you would put that ellipsis after the 19th name, and then you would end with the very last author on the list. No ampersand, you would just use the ellipsis in that case. Notice here, I do have a corporate author, the National Library of Medicine, so it doesn't have to be a personal name. Next thing, year of publication. So that's fairly straightforward. My book was published in 2007, so on and so on. It's just the year inside parentheses followed by a period. Okay. If it's a case where the date actually matters, so for example, a newspaper that's issued every day, you need to know what day the one you were looking at was issued on, then you would do it like this: year first, comma, month and day, date, I should say, the 15th, and you close it with parentheses and a period. There are some other options here. For example, if it's just a month, or if it was a season. Some journals publish like spring, summer, winter, fall issues. You can say summer this way. If there is actually no date at all, and that's most common for web pages, then you put this abbreviation, N period D period, for no date. And you put that inside parentheses, and because this is the end of a unit, it always gets a period afterward, okay? Now we need to talk about titles, and to do that, we need to talk about capitalization. So we have title case versus sentence case. Title case means the first word, along with basically every important word in the title, is going to be capitalized. The only ones you don't capitalize are some small words in the middle of your text, like in, and, of, by, the. The opposite is sentence case, which is what it sounds like, the way you write a sentence. So your first word is capitalized, but everything else is lowercased, okay? Unless it's a proper noun, like a person's name or a place name, okay? In this case, the colon, you are considering that one as like a period, and this is starting a new sentence. So when you have a subtitle that follows a colon, you would still capitalize that first word. So title case versus sentence case. This is the super confusing part, I think, of APA style. In APA style, the only things that ever get title case are journals, journal titles, right? Or journal titles of journal-like things like magazines or newspapers. They also consider a full website title, not just an individual web page, but a full website name that also gets title case in APA style. Everything else, article titles, essay titles, book titles, web page titles, they're all in sentence case. So think about this as the only thing that's going to get title case is a journal title or a full website. So moving on to our next piece of information, my book title. Book titles are in sentence case, and they are also italicized, okay, slanty letters. And again, you put a period at the end of the full title. Your article title, which is not the same as your journal title, your article title is in sentence case. It does not have any quotation marks around it. Okay, if you're thinking that's what it's supposed to be, that's MLA style and Chicago style. Same for the title of an essay in an edited book. If it's a web page title, so my web page is about chronic pain, that's its title, that is in sentence case and it is italicized, okay, as if it was a book. In the case of books, we do need to talk about editions and editors. So if you have a particular edition of a book that has gone through multiple editions, you need to indicate which one you consulted. That will be stated clearly on the book normally. For this one, which was a second edition, this is how you do it, with the superscripted numeric designation there. ED period, lowercase, that's the abbreviation for edition. Not italicized, it's just inside parentheses. Note again, it's an abbreviation, ED period, parentheses, period. That period is showing that it's the end of this unit. This period is part of the abbreviation. Essay in an edited book. So here we have to explain exactly what this is. Very often in the social sciences and other academic disciplines, you will find books of essays that have all been written by different people. Each chapter, as it were, has a different author, although all of the essays may be on a similar topic or a related topic. So each essay has an author, but then the book itself has been put together by what we call an editor or editors. There can be more than one. They may or may not have actually written anything in the book, but they were responsible for gathering it all together, getting it all organized, and getting it published. So in that case, we've already indicated the author of our essay, the year the book was published, the title of our essay, but now we need to talk about the book it came from. So for that, we start off by saying in, and that in is capitalized here. And then we do the author names, and we don't invert them. I'm sorry, I should say we do the editor names, but we don't invert the editor names. We say B. Barrett, okay? And after that, we put capital ED period inside parentheses. That indicates that that person is an editor of the book. If you had two co-editors, you would list them with an ampersand, and you would say EDS for editors. Notice the difference. This one is not capitalized. This one is. They mean different things. Okay, after you've taken care of the editor's name, you have a comma, then you have the title of the whole book, Essays on Government Documents, which is italicized and in sentence case. Final piece of this, you would put the page numbers of the essay within the book. And you do it in this way, parentheses, PP period, which is, again, pages, space, and then the beginning and the ending page of the essay, 35-48. Close the parentheses, period, end of this unit. Publisher. or journal or website. Okay, for books, we have two books here, an edited book and a regular old book. You just put the publisher's name, that's all. Capitalize it the way they capitalize it. You don't need to put the city they're located in, just the name of the publisher, okay? So here on our regular book and here on our essay that came from an edited book. For articles and web pages, things are different. So an article, where it came from, where it was published, is the name of the journal and the information about it within the journal. So this, which is italicized, and notice the capital letter, it's in title case. That is the name of the journal, okay? And however the journal does its title, like if it has funny capitalization, like it's using acronyms or it's running things together with strange like symbols and so on, you're just going to reproduce that however they choose to do it on their journal. So for example, cognition and emotion doesn't spell out the word and it uses an ampersand in its official title, so I've used it here. In italics, comma, also in italics, space. This number is the volume number. Most journals do have a volume number. That is also italicized. The next piece, which here is inside parentheses, is not italicized. That's regular. That's the issue number. Each volume may be made up of several different issues. They're usually numbered. If you know the number, you put it in. If there isn't a number, you just omit it. Then there's a comma, and you have the page numbers of the article itself, just the ending and the beginning and the ending, then followed by a period. Why is this one different from this one? Who knows? It's just a stylistic choice that they made. Just be aware that that's a difference. When you're dealing with a web page, if it is part of an identifiable larger site, then you include that website name as being where this came from. So my page defining chronic pain came from a larger site that is called Medline Plus. It is in title case, so capped, no italics. Now we need to say just a word about DOIs. These apply mostly to articles, but you may see them apply to other materials as well. It's a unique alphanumerical string that is intended to always identify the official home of this item out on the internet. Not all items have DOIs, maybe because they're too old to be relevant, or maybe because DOIs cost money, so not everybody wants to pay for them. The way the DOI is displayed can really vary from article to article, but no matter how the DOI looks on your article, when you put it into the citation, you are always going to reformat it in this way, which is with this URL stem, https://doi.org/, and then you're basically just going to copy paste in the DOI however it looks, okay? They typically look something like this, but there's some variation on how those look as well. So here is my article with its DOI right after the page numbers, okay? If your DOI breaks across a line, that's fine. If it forces itself onto a new line, that's fine. Just however your word processor formats them, leave it alone. Do not put periods at the end of a URL. Why? Because it could interfere with the functionality of the web address, okay? And you want it to be a functional link. Similar thing down here with the web page. I need to indicate its address on the web. So here I have the URL. Again, no period at the end of a URL because it can affect the functionality. Now here's how they look when they are all finished. They are properly now in alphabetical order by the author's last name, okay, GLNS. They are all double-spaced. They all have a hanging indent. My two online materials have functional URLs. And there you go.